I mean, they're also fascinating. So I wanted to know more about maybe something that's not so commonly talked about. Some, I don't know, I want to say weird, but weird's not the right word, you know?
Weird is the realm in which I live. No, well, what we were doing in the book. This is just, I know there's a few people are talking about off planet, but I was just talking about, human incarnations on Earth. But I have clients that, I've had them create universes. We are not, we are not limited beings at all. We are great creator beings, but we, as Dolores says, we just come down here to Earth to learn limitations and emotions mainly. But limitations, certainly. We think we're having these little lives, but it's like just incredible, creating planets, looking after new planets, things like that. So I suppose a lot of people might find that a little bit weird, but I always find it fun. So
Yeah, I find it fun too. I find it very fascinating. So tell me more about the client that created universes. What did they describe?
I'm trying to think of the details of that. Well, I can remember one that was creating a planet, and she was actually caring for a planet. She was a bit like an energy worm, and they were creating this planet. She had to look after the planet, so she was there. She was taking measurements, how it's going, how it's developing, are all of the life forms on it going okay? And whenever it wasn't doing so well, she'd just kind of wrap around the planet and send it like this beautiful glowing worm thing and send it this loving energy, and it would perk up. And yeah, so she was responsible for temp, but she also had to take all these measurements and report back to a central place. And she wasn't the only one doing this. There were others like her looking after other planets, but they all had to report their measurements back to this. They didn't know who they were reporting to, but they just had to report back to this place. I can't remember. It was can't remember how they did the reporting. I had a feeling there was some sort of funnel, but anyway. So, but after a while, when you moved her onto a next scene, she's there, and she's there with a lot of the others, and they're really upset because their planets are not doing well, and their planets are dying. And so, yeah, I can't remember the full bit. It's been a while with this one, but just the absolute grief from this client about the fact that the planets were dying. It was just like, and you can't make that sort of emotion up. So yeah, that one was really, that sat with me, but I don't remember all of it. I don't remember all of my sessions. Like I might remember bits and pieces if I think that it's probably relevant to something or a book or something later on. But yeah, but I just remember the grief that she had that these planets were dying. It was just so sad.
Oh, that is so sad. What about maybe incarnations as a different type of being, like maybe a being on a different planet or some type of, creature living in the wilderness or something like that?
Oh, well, I sometimes get some of the interesting creatures are when we get to go down into inner earth. That's always fascinating. And I remember one, I can't remember the full bit, but I just remember it was like a beetle. She was like a beetle type being, but she wasn't a beetle. And she was carrying this map, and the map was on her back. And then she had to find a crystal or something. I got to write these things down. A crystal or something, and she overlaid the map on it, and it did something like it regenerated something, or it was. Oh no, that's right. It was something like it sent out this like tone, I think. There's about like the song of the world or something like that. I can't remember. I've really got to go back and look through all this. Really fascinating. But yeah, it's interesting. Like I had a client the other day that actually went down through, she was a sunflower. God bless her. And so she comes in and she's like really up close to one of those yellow petals, and she's like, couldn't get her not to be fixated on this petal for a while. We eventually figured out she was one of the dots that was in the sunflower. And and you know how they're all sort of like, they're all individual flowers, but these yellow petals are like false leaves or something on these sorts of flowers. But she was one of these, but all of her female ancestral line were also there with her. So this is one of these times when they were together. And she just loved, she was in this field of sunflowers and just loved flowing with with the breeze of, and I can't remember what there was a reason they showed her that. I can't remember the top of my head. But then they showed her actually going down through the stem of the sunflower into the earth, and she saw all the worms, and that was like she got the understanding that you can't be this beautiful sunflower without it has to start somewhere. So down in the earth, and then she went further down. She went through and she came into this cavern, and she could hear dripping water. And it was reasonably dark. She could see a little bit of light, but she could hear the dripping. And then she fell down into a river that was in the bottom of the canyon, in the cavern, and she's flowing along that, and then she becomes a fish. And she flows along, and eventually this river flows out of the earth and into sort of like the ocean, and then she gets washed up on a beach as a starfish. And the higher conscious said they showed her all of this to show that everything's always transforming and everything is always changing, and we go through all these multiple forms. I think that was the message for it. But yeah, so that was cool. I liked following that one.
Yeah, that's cool. I wonder if they showed it to her almost like, transitions in a movie where they show bits and pieces of it, or if she actually transferred consciousness from one thing to another. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. I think it was about this transforming part because it was very short, and then they went on to show her a more complicated life. But also, I can't remember. But,
and it's also
but I remember that bit. That was really fun.
Yeah, and it's also interesting how she was just a piece of the flower and not the entire flower. That's cool
She
too.
was like, yeah, so she was like, if they had eventually that sunflower, she would have been like the sunflower seed because that's an
Yes.
individual flower that's in there. But it was the fact that she was there with all of her ancestors, and her ancestors became very important in the session, and their influence with her now and things like that. So, yeah,
Oh, that's
there you go. So
amazing.
that's one. And they just love being trees. They love being trees. And I remember I had one, and she was like this tiny little sapling in a redwood forest. And she was wanting to grow up and she wanted to see the light, but obviously they're very slow growing and eventually move off to, I think it was one of the last scenes of that life. And she's this big redwood tree, and she's been there for centuries. And then she's and because trees in these forests, they're all connected. And they've actually proven that now, that they all transfer information through the mycelium network, but they're all connected. And she got the word from the edge of the forest that a fire was coming, and I'm sitting there going, oh my goodness, this is going to be tragic. But she actually was really happy about it because she'd been a tree for so long, she was ready to move on to her next experience. But it didn't end up being that bad. But yeah, they just love being trees. I've had other clients that just love to stare at the stars at night, and yeah. So go hug a tree. They'll appreciate it.
Wow, I wonder what it must be like to be a tree and just stand there forever. And I've heard that they not only share information, like you said, but they also share resources. So if there's one
Yes.
tree that needs more water or whatever it may be, then the other trees can send it through their root system because the roots are all
Yes.
interconnected too.
Yeah, or you'll have mother trees or grandmother trees, and the little saplings around. If they're not doing well, they'll all send energy to there. So there's all research that's now proving all of this metaphysical stuff that we're getting in these sessions. So yes. So, but I've also had trees as portals. So sometimes you can go through a tree to go somewhere else. So that's always something to explore if we get a tree. It depends on what is being discussed at the time. So, because I never know what I'm going to get. So it's just like every day is a new journey.
That's so fascinating because I did always know that there's something about trees. Like I love touching them. When I was a little kid, I would love going near trees and sitting under them or playing around them or just holding and hugging them. I didn't know what I was doing when I was doing it, as a child. But there was this one tree at my grandmother's house, and I felt like this was a mean tree. I don't know how to explain it, but this tree felt mean to me. And I don't know what it was about. It was a very big, old, strong tree, and it was there forever. Like since before they even built houses there, they just built around it. And the root system was so strong and thick, it would lift up the concrete from the backyard. It would lift it up. And I just felt like this tree was mean. What do you think that like I don't see a reason for it to be, but maybe it was just my projection or something.
Well, it's probably like a stern old grandfather. It's seen things come and go. And so it may have just been, it might be the sternness of it. I find old trees usually have a lot of wisdom. Like I was thinking, how we were talking about perhaps me writing more books, and I had been thinking about that for a while. And I was actually given about 10 titles by a tree of all things. I was off on a retreat. It was actually a retreat for psychotherapists, and so we were doing some ecotherapy type work outside, and then sort of got us to wander off. And it was in this beautiful old healing place. I had these massive trees in this beautiful garden. So I wandered off, and I sort of, they said, close your eyes and imagine your roots are coming out of your feet and you're anchored to earth, and all of a sudden, yes, I don't know whether, I'm assuming everybody's the same, is that when you close your eyes and you get a sense of your environment, you can kind of see your environment around you. And so when I was doing this, I could get the sense there's a tree here, there's a tree here, and there's this really ancient tree in front of me. When I opened my eyes, that tree was not there. When I closed them again, it was back. And that was the tree that I was kind of like communicating with them. It was like, okay, well, I've got this challenge. I want to write some books. What do I do? And it was just like, boom, 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 boom. There are all the categories. A tree. So, so even ecotherapy
Fascinating.
can be cool. Yeah.
Amazing. And is it so like the flower that has different pieces of each part of the flower is a different consciousness, if you can say it like that. Is that why if you pick one petal of a flower, it won't necessarily die? Same with like, let's say leaves on a tree or branches. Maybe one branch, if it breaks off, the tree won't die. But then what causes the entire plant to die? You know what I'm saying? Like, when is the life force out of it? Is all that consciousness together, holding it together, and there's a certain percentage, like if 70% is out, it dies, you know?
I've had clients that have been full flowers. Like this was just one thing which they wanted to say that she was this individual part within the sunflower. But I've had them be complete flowers, and they love being flowers. They're often really happy. They realise they haven't got a long life, but they just enjoy it while they're there. And so that would be a whole soul, I would think, as being the flower. And they know that these things are going to happen, but they enjoy it at the time. I think when we're looking at leaves falling off trees and things, given that the client has been the full tree, I think it's a little bit like when we lose some hair. Hair falls out, or clip our fingernails or whatever. I think it's when it's more related to when that soul as the tree plans to pass or is to pass. Apparently we plan all of our exits. So that's the way I would look at that, rather than saying that once a certain percentage it goes. Everything's planned. The way we go is all planned. Not that the higher consciousness will tell you how you're going to go, which is
Yes.
good.
Yeah, and since our last conversation, I think we spoke a little bit about everything being conscious, even inanimate objects. So nature, we kind of have an idea that nature is alive, right? But what about like inanimate objects, like, I don't know, your table or your chair or whatever? Um, do you think that there is a difference in how that consciousness interacts with other things around it compared to how a nature, like let's say again trees and flowers, maybe their consciousness interacts differently than how a chair would, because it's not natural. I don't know how to just explain what I'm.
Yeah, I've not had anyone be like a chair or a table. I have spoken to another practitioner where they had someone who was a statue and was watching some of the things that were going on. But I did have the high conscious once show, everybody thinks this is so weird, show her what it was like to be a parking meter. But I think that was partly just to get the message across. Who knows? Fucking meters may have consciousness. I'm nice to everything. So, but that's, yeah, I haven't had anyone be, like I've had them be rocks and I've had them be water and air and all of that sort of thing. But I haven't had anyone who's been a chair. Not to say that it may not happen, but no, I haven't come across that. I mean, obviously the wood the chair is made out of was once a tree, but I don't know that that has consciousness, but I think everything in nature has consciousness of some sort. And it's funny, and often there's one thing that Dolores talks about is that with animals, you know, you've got certain animals like herd animals that they have, she said that she thought that they had like a group consciousness, but that's, I'm not sure that that's the case, to be honest. Being a pet owner, I mean, we know when we have our pets, they all have their own personalities and they all have their own souls. So that's something that I'm hoping that I'll come across at some point to test that theory, but it's about the only thing I don't agree with.
Oh, it's so fascinating. It's so wonderful to think about. You just interact differently with your environment when you know and when you remember that everything is conscious and interacting, and there's giving and receiving of information and energy, and this healing that can take place. That's for me the most fascinating when you interact with nature for the purpose of healing. I read something, I don't know if it was an article or maybe a page in a book or something, but there was someone who described she had a fatal diagnosis. It could have been cancer or something like that. And I'm not sure what type it was, but she decided that every day she would go, while she had the strength, she would go out and she would be with nature and just kind of absorb, the nature. And she was doing that every single day. She would go out and she would interact with nature as much as she could for the whole of the day, as long as she could during the day. And she was eating only natural foods and all that stuff. Obviously, everything else played a role as well. But she healed. She completely healed. And she believes, in the way she describes what she believed was that the nature healed her. She had a conscious interaction with nature and they were healing her. So that was very fascinating to read too.
Oh, that is certainly the case, but there's also great research on earthing and just how good that is for healing the body and regulating hormones and all of that. So if she was doing that barefoot,
Yeah.
Yeah, that would add, even to the point of just lying on the ground and just allowing, because cancer is usually related to some sort of held on anger or anger energy. And so you can see how just surrounding yourself with a positive nature of nature, then and keeping your viewpoint positive, you can see how that might be interactive as well. So yeah, that definitely. That I mean, when I talk to the high conscious, whenever when we do a scan of the body to see, what would be most helpful for the client, particularly on the areas of movement or exercise, 9 times out of 10, nature's involved. They'll be, if they say, they need to be out in nature, I usually ask, well, is it, is she better around trees or is she better at the ocean? These sorts of things, because they have frequencies and energies as well. And they're always happy to say which is best for that particular client.
Wow. And what about maybe a life force from a different planet, like a different being, something like that?
Oh goodness, there's been a few. There's one that sits with me, which was I'm trying to remember whether it was in a past life or whether it was once they passed in a human incarnation. But she actually returned to a realm which was just all blue energy. And she described it as coming home, and her voice changed into a very childlike voice. And she was so happy to be back with her friends. And she saw all the friends around her as just like blue energy, but they had these big, dark eyes. And when you looked into them, they were kind of the eyes of the universe. It's the universe is in them, but they were generally just energy. And they're in this realm. And she was so happy to get back. But when she was here on the table, her whole body started vibrating with this energy, because part of her purpose is to bring the energy from that realm into Earth to assist it. But yeah, it's a lot of energy, but she was so happy to be back with all of her friends. And that's how she described, she was like that when she went there, but all of her friends looked like that as well. But it was just a change in her voice to this really childlike voice that was just really cool.
Yeah, that's kind of like it's kind of like some NDEs where they go into different realms and they get to experience themselves as different beings. Um, there's someone that I did a book with, and she described going to a water planet, and she was a water being, almost like a
Mm-hmm.
mermaid, but not quite. It was a little bit different, but very similar. And she had an entire life. She lived an entire life in that. Um, well, time is not what we experience here. So she experienced that entire life while having her NDE in that water
Yeah.
planet, and she remembers
Mm-hmm.
having babies and being in this cave and having this whole life, this beautiful life as this I don't know if she remembers everything or if it was just bits and pieces of it that came through, but that was also so cool about this water planet. And there's so many planets out there, and there's so many different things and
Yeah.
beings.
I know. It's like everything's unlimited. But yeah,
Yeah.
I've had past lives on a watery planet. I spend most of my time on watery planets if I'm not here. So,
Do you
which is probably
enjoy
why.
water on this planet too?
Sorry?
Do you enjoy water on this planet too?
Certain water, I did get scared at the beach once by a large tire that I turned around and there was there. So I like to see what's around me in the water
Me
now.
too.
But
I have
yeah,
this thing. I will not get into water that I cannot see through. And I
yeah.
don't know if it's a past life thing or, I'm connecting with some other lifetime type of thing. But I don't know, there's a word for it. Large bodies of water freak me out. And if I
Mm-hmm.
watch, these shorts or these videos of like people who work on oil rigs on those huge ships, and you see those waves coming in the dark, dark water, I get this
Mm-hmm.
churning feeling in my tummy, and I'm like, no, this does not feel right.
Yes, so this is the sort of thing that I love doing in QHHT is helping people through those sorts of phobias or finding out where they come from. And a lot of people have phobias about water, and it might have been that they drowned in one life or they were eaten by something, or yeah. So yeah, I think phobias are one of the things that really get linked to past lives, unless there was something that happened early in this life. But yeah, I always find that really fascinating. I was thinking today about I had a mother come to me, and her very young son was having a lot of fear or phobia around fire and needles. And she wanted to know, like, they'd explored everything, they couldn't get it, so they decided to come to me to see if they could figure out what was going on. And it turns out, we found out the boy had been undergoing some form of medical procedure in a past life in a hospital, which involved needles, and the hospital caught on fire and he died from his injuries. And so that's where that came from. So it, although we've tried to do as much as we can through the higher conscious to try and ease that for the other person, at least the parents now know that that's probably where it is, and then they could address the fears that way. So that was hopefully helpful. Yeah.
Mm. So in a case like that with a child, is just knowing where the phobia and fear comes from enough to help them ease it? Like you said, the higher consciousness works as well with the person, but sometimes do they carry that still throughout their lifetime, even though they know, oh, I'm connecting to this life where I died in a fire? Does it still continue to bother them?
Well, I don't know because I don't. I leave it up to people to recontact me afterwards. I always, in the session, I always try to negotiate best I can to have this alleviated from the other person. Mainly, I work sort of with the client that have got the phobia, so I know what's going on here. So yeah, but yeah, phobias are one of those things that are often linked to strange things happening in past lives. Like I had another lady who started to really just not be able to drive anywhere, and particularly over water and particularly over bridges. It was getting to really inhibit her life. And she went to a life where it was probably from the description of the car, it's probably like 1930s. And she actually went off a bridge and drowned in the water. So that's where that came from. And once we understand where this comes from, often, whatever, because often we hold the energy of that in the body, and so in the session, I'll be asking the higher conscious, is it in their best interest to release this energy and send it back to where it came from? And so that can alleviate the fear as well. So yeah.
I'm thinking in terms of like planning. So let's say I'm in the higher realms and I'm planning this life, and I'm saying, okay, I'm gonna come and I'm gonna do these things, and I'm gonna be this person, and this is gonna be my life, and I'm gonna choose these guys to be my family, and we're gonna go and we're gonna do this. Now, when I'm in that planning stage and I'm choosing this person that I'm gonna be, and I'm, looking at all the variables, and I get to choose the things I get to choose or whatever it may be, I wonder if I know the phobias and the fears and the past life stuff or parallel life stuff I will be attached to and connected to. Or if I choose them kind of like consciously, like, okay, I'm going to choose this person because there's an attachment to dying in a fire, and I'm going to be aware of it in this life, and I get to transform that. Or if it just randomly comes up and it's like I get to choose to transform it or not. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I haven't. I don't know the answer to that question. I haven't had that come up in when we're looking at planning phases. But it's really interesting. I might start asking that question to the higher consciousness. Like, was this
Yeah.
part of their plan to overcome this? Or I often think we just carry stuff through. I always recommend we do a full check to make sure there's no energies in the body that they weren't supposed to be. Yeah, I suppose my wording does say, is there anything that she's carrying that doesn't serve her, for instance? And then, we bring all sorts of things through from other lives that doesn't really help our life here. It just kind of got stuck. That's the way I look at it. So from previous experience, and often the way the person passes, but yeah, it happens quite a lot. Sometimes there'll be layers and layers, like I'll be spending a couple of hours just going through the layers and sending it back, asking the high conscious to do what it can to send it back, it's that sort of thing. So we do bring a lot of stuff through.
Yeah, like for example, I don't know if you remember Lynn. She was helping, she was part of our book. And so in her book, she describes when she was very young, she believed that she was a boy. She was very much convinced of the fact that she was a boy, and she had undergone some type of surgery, or they had done some type of operation on her to make her a girl. She was convinced of this. And obviously her mother, told her that is not true, and that's a lie. And they were actually convinced that there was something wrong with her. They didn't try to help her in terms of, let's help this child that's suffering with this thing. They were kind of like, there's something wrong with her and we need to fix her with, psychiatrists and medicine and whatever. And this was, I think, in the 70s. So it was not as, mental health was not a thing they cared about. They were just like, there's something wrong with you, let's fix you. And so she brought that knowingly. I think she didn't describe it like that in the book, but knowingly she brought that into this life so that she could deal with it, because it was part of her journey of going from chronic anxiety and all of that to unconditional self-love, because she grew up with a lot of self-hatred, not feeling like she belonged, not feeling worthy. She was feeling like she was defective from a very young age. Her parents told her that she was not wanted. So things like that. So she knowingly brought this energy in, knowing that she was going to use it as part of her transformation. So I guess my question would be, like I said, I wonder if we sometimes choose to bring these things in, knowing it's part of our transformation, or if like you say, if it randomly just comes through, sometimes it just sticks.
Yeah, I think both. And do you remember how old she was when she was having these
I
thoughts
think
that
she
she
said,
was?
yeah, I think she said between 3 and 5. She was
Yeah,
still very young.
it's quite possible also that she'd spent many lives as a male, and this time she came in this way, because we're looking back at some of the work of Dr. Ian Stevenson and his work with spontaneous past life memories in young children. Often they'll remember a lot of the previous life up until about the age of 5. So that's also possible. And there's a huge body of his case studies on that. It's really fascinating work. So that may also have been in play, or it might be that she wanted to have these challenges.
Mm. She did say that she spent many lives as a male, and that she was told when she was in the planning phase that she had to choose a female body this time because she was a male way too many times, and this time it needed to be that. So she did say that, so that tracks definitely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
That's often the case. Yeah.
So fascinating. There's so many
We've
things
all
to
got to be
discuss
everything.
and consider, and there's so many avenues and pathways you can go into. There's so many questions that are not even known to be asked, because it's just
Yeah.
so vast.
Yeah, and that's what can be challenging when you get a client whose high conscious is a very high level high conscious. The way I look at it, we're multi vibrational beings, and this high conscious has got these various levels. And when you get a really high one, they can be a lot of work because they like
Mm,
their questions asked the right way. But when you do, the information like, but they're so far removed from the human experience. Sometimes you have to,
yes.
if the client's got a lot of questions about their life now, sometimes, once you've extracted all you can from them, you have to ask for a different level. Somebody else who could come through, or some other level that could come through and ask the more 3D related questions. But yeah, it's like it's limitless, but it really does require you. Like I'm sitting there going, oh, I'm going to have to bring my A game today. I hope I'm intelligent enough for this because I'm in my little 3D body talking to a 7-dimensional something or other. It's just like, and they pull me up all the time if I say things like, oh, is this a good outcome or a bad outcome? They're like, well, there is no good or bad. It's just experience.
Yes.
Fair enough. You're right. It's just
Yes.
like, I have to really consider how I speak because they're just they're so removed from our sort of our judgment or the duality that we have down here. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I can imagine that to be true because that is what it is. And it's like, as much as we want to have an expanded understanding and, just be in that realm, it's not possible because of our limitation as humans. And I'm not using limitation as a bad word. It's just what it is, If the limitation didn't exist, we couldn't have a human experience. And maybe if we were open to all of the many, many things that are existing that we don't have access to as humans, we wouldn't fully appreciate the human experience. Maybe that's why it needs to be so. For now, it's just a short period of time anyway.
Well, some people come here to choose to be in the 3D experience. Other people are here to transform, to increase their vibration, move into the 5D. But some of them, they just wanted to come here to be 3D. So we can't. I think our clients say, "Oh, I wish they could, be like me." And it's just like, just leave them have their experience. When they're ready, their higher consciousness will wake them up. They'll look at you, go, "What's she doing?" And they'll come talk to you. But you can't change others on their particular journey. Some of them have come here just to do that, and that's
Yes.
okay.
Wow. Well, I really want to read your book. I hope you are working hard at it because I am just so excited to read all these stories. I have so many questions. Maybe I will write you a list of questions once I've read your book and I'll say, Lynda, I need a part two.
I always I kind of need questions because it needs to come out of the database somehow. Uh,
I'm more than willing. I
yeah.
am more than willing. I would love to. I'll send you a list of questions right now. I've got a notebook full of questions. So I'm more than happy. I would love to. Well, thank you so much,
Yeah.
Lynda. I hope you have a
You're
wonderful
very
day further. And yeah, I look forward to speaking to you again soon. We're going to have a group discussion about our book with all the other authors. So
welcome.
yeah, we'll chat further then and we'll compare stories and speak more about this wonderful, fascinating topic. And again, our book is available on pre-order. I'll put the links in the description and I'll put all the links to Lynda and her work and how you can find her and work with her in the description as well. So thank you so much, Lynda. Have a wonderful day.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.